Welcome to the Savory Scoop. Today we have a co-host, Payal Khurana. She will be joining us to talk about motherhood. She's also an entrepreneur. And like many entrepreneurs, Payal considers herself devoted. Her deepest devotion is supporting others to serve the moment with intention and unwavering presence. She was born in India, raised in Tampa, Florida, and went to the University of Florida to get her bachelor's in computer engineering. She spent 8 years working in healthcare IT and living all over the country until she realized that something was missing. With a self reflective lifestyle and over 9 years of a meditation practice, a growing awareness of her discomfort in the corporate world led her to leave New York City. Back in Gainesville, after a long hiatus, she co founded Starter Space, a co working space. She later created a 6 week mindfulness program to support others with tools to move through disconnection, distraction, and dissatisfaction. Payal leans into her rich Indian heritage of meditation and travels the world to share the transformative power of presence and deep listening. From individuals to corporations to top rated universities to TEDx, her work has been a driving force in bringing meditation to modern culture. In 2018, she founded and invited thousands of people into the doors of Gainesville's very first mindfulness studio. Pregnancy and Presence is Pyle's first book. She currently spends her time with her husband and sons near her Bhakti Yoga spiritual community. If you need a copy of this book, you can find this on Amazon, and we will share a link right below this episode. Thank you, Pyle, for being with us. So excited to just dive right into everything you have been doing and your amazing book. I know you've been doing mindfulness based, talks and work for like many years now. What made you write a book on pregnancy and presence, like how to bring mindfulness into pregnancy as opposed to any other topics?
Thank you. Well, first off, thank you both for having me here on the Savories Group. It's such a gift because it's taken us some time to get here and to be connecting with each other. So I'm just really grateful that we're here. Um, what made me decide pregnancy? Honestly, it was one of those things. It was like I was pregnant and I was looking at like my experience. I was just noticing these conversations that people were having with me, like that what people felt so invited to come and say to me because I was pregnant. And I was really surprised at the consciousness around pregnancy and pregnant women and some of the things being like as simple as someone asking me like, are you having a boy or a girl? And I was choosing not to like find out until the birth, and people were like, but how are you going to paint the room pink or blue? And I'm like, I'm going to be okay. And just like this subconscious, like this kind of belittling me while I was pregnant. And I was like, wow, there's the consciousness of pregnancy in our modern society is like an open invitation to say whatever you want to this woman that's carrying a new spirit into this world. And I wanted to create something that any pregnant mother had that was conversations I wished I was having versus the ones that people felt invited to start with me.
I love that. And I wish that this was more of a resource when I was pregnant because
Mm.
I feel the same way that you did. And unconsciously, with my first daughter, who is 25 years old, I adopted all of these beliefs the same way that you did without even reading anything either, but didn't realize that I was using like all of the hypnobirthing
Mm.
concepts just intuitively. So in my mind, it was like, how do I change that? Negative language, that conditioning that society has been so conditioned that like being pregnant and having a baby is like they tell you all of their fearful negative experiences and everything is supposed to be like in this box, and so it was all about, I can relate with you, like changing the language around that, the belief, releasing the fear, releasing the conditioning and programming. So that's really cool that you did that. And this could be
Totally.
such a useful tool, especially these days. I think people are more, with social media and all of the resources we have, we're exposed to more of the mindfulness and the consciousness. But back then, back in the day, 25 years ago, we really didn't have a lot of that. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
glad it resonates, and it's interesting that you're saying that. It's like, okay, 25 years ago, and then when I wrote this book, it was what, 6 years ago, and so much has come to the light since I wrote this book, and what a gift that there is social media, and there's more mothers talking about, like, okay, wait a minute, like, what are these conversations that we're having with our pregnant mothers or with mothers in general, and how are we treating each other? Totally. And I'm glad to hear that you found that space for yourself while being pregnant, because it's such a vulnerable time.
It is. It really is. Yeah. And then how old are your kids?
I have two now. So when I wrote in, I was thinking about this. I have a 6 year old and then a 20-month old. I forget sometimes with my second child. I'm like, how old is he? But he's 20 months. Both of them are boys.
Nice. And so we've been trying to do this for quite some time now, to all
Yes.
connect and have the right timing to do this. What did that entail for you to be able to make the time to be present, to be able to come on and share your time with us today?
Well, interestingly, the first time Simi invited me on, and we had scheduled our conversation, I was ready to go, and then I remember 3 or 4 days before I started to feel unwell, and I remember messaging Simi and being like, I don't know, I just felt so much like I'm someone who honors my word, and I wanted to stick to my commitment, even though, like, the motherhood part, as in taking care of my kids, I'm really grateful that I have a partner that supports me also serving my purpose. And so, I felt taken care of being able to show up and do this conversation when it comes to my kids being taken care of, but like myself being prepared. I don't know, this was probably 6 or 7 months ago, Simi, I think. I don't
Yeah.
remember when we had planned it. And so I started to feel sick, and it just got worse and worse, and called Simi, and I was like, I really want to, and I'm going to be coughing, I'm pretty sure. And I don't think that would, sit well with a podcast, like coughing every other sentence. And so we made a joint decision together, to choice to move this, and then I think me and Simi would just like reconnect every once in a while, like, okay, we're gonna schedule it, and then we didn't. And there's always things needing my attention, and like you're asking is, what does it take? As I, I mean, it's aligning my schedule, making sure my kids are taken care of, making sure that my husband has what he needs, which he usually is like self-sufficient, but all the food is prepared, all the things, and I'm grateful to be here
We're
and to
grateful to
get.
have you here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
I
for
Get to
know.
spending
be.
time with us.
Same pile. And I really like how both of you brought up the societal expectation part. So when I got pregnant, which was like 20 something years, 22 years ago, there was no social media. There wasn't as much access to what all the mothers all around the world think about pregnancy or raising children, because every society has different expectations, right? And then you only know that circle within your community. So you start behaving like that because you think that's the best thing. Now, if I had more awareness, I would have probably gone to the library and picked out the books and, done all of that. But the only book I picked up was like how to raise the baby perfectly. I can't remember the exact name of the book, but
What to
but
expect when expecting.
books like that, right? Like
Yeah,
if the baby
exactly.
Already
cries,
projected.
leave them in the crib so that you don't have to like try to do it all
Yeah.
perfectly as a mom with like no real awareness of what motherhood truly means.
Yeah.
So I really, really love that more moms like you, Pyle, are sharing their stories. And then to feel empowered to say that, hey, this is the way I want to experience motherhood with the being that has been brought into this world through me, right? As opposed to someone else's idea of what that journey looks like. So when someone comes up to us and says, oh, you should send your kid to this school or try make sure they get this GPA or feed them this food, whatever it might be. It's so great to hear women who are becoming moms saying, what's the best for me and my child, right? So I really appreciate what you've been doing through this. And I know mindfulness is a huge part of your life. You had a corporate career for like over 10 years, like over a decade. And this is something you've been curious about and then became passionate about. And this is what you love to share. What made you bring that mindfulness aspect into this? Like what was about that you thought would help you through this journey?
About pregnancy, like help me through
About
pregnancy.
bringing the mindfulness
Ah,
aspect of it into pregnancy and delivery, like the whole process
ah,
that you share in the book.
totally. Thank you for asking that question. I love that question because it's like why mindfulness, right? And it's well presence, and that's what mindfulness is. And I one of the things when I was writing what, part of that inspiration as well of yes, what was coming at me, but how present was I being with my pregnancy? Because that's another thing that's like I think the common thing to do when pregnant, especially for first time moms, is make sure I have all the stuff. Make sure that I have all the physical, material things to make sure that I'm prepared for when this baby comes out of my body, that I have all the physical tools to take care of the baby.
Yeah,
That's what I think. I would say that's what the status quo is
for
of a
sure.
first time mom. And the thing that I was meditating on or just, reflecting on is like, well, what about my being? Like, is my being going to be prepared when this baby comes out into the world? And so that was what, the aspect of mindfulness. The only way that we can connect with our being is by actually being with ourselves, present with ourselves, not running to the store and buying a million things, not analyzing, like, of course, like, have fun with decorating your nursery, have fun with these things. I'm not taking the joy out of the process of being a first time mother, and how important it is to get to be with ourselves when we're pregnant, and that presence, right? And i think it's I think it's so easy, like even outside of pregnancy, to not be present, right? We're
Yeah.
constantly disassociating, whether it's, looking at our phones or checking our email or just checking out mentally. And it
Yeah.
was just something to me that I was like, gosh, pregnancy is such a short period.
Yeah.
And how can I bring more presence into this process? And I felt like the conversation around mindfulness was there, but I didn't see much around pregnancy. There's conversations about motherhood and mindfulness, but not, again, not pregnancy. So that was where I wanted to. It was about, okay, what do I want to create that I wished existed for me too
That's
when I.
amazing. Did you are you familiar with the hypnobirthing, the Mongan method?
Yes, I am.
It's
I bought the
very
book.
much in alignment with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the philosophies that I followed when I was pregnant, very much in alignment with everything that you're saying. But taking that time every day to meditate and practice breathing that would
Mm,
support me during like labor and delivery. And then afterwards as well, meditation and being present in the in is being in the moment, right? And if we're in the moment, then we're active in our lives, we're
for
engaged in
sure.
our life, and we're not losing this second, which is so fleeting. And like you said, pregnancy is it goes by so fast, so it's like, and there's so much magic in it, rather than focusing on, the negative things or the discomfort. I learned to change the meaning of things and words, like, fear causes pain. So if you remove the fear and the fear based beliefs and replace those with positive beliefs and positive habits, then the fear is gone. You can call pain maybe like a burning sensation or something a little bit more positive, and breathe into it. It makes a huge difference, and you're being present and you're active, in your experience, rather than letting the monkey mind take over and the fear, take over. So,
So
yeah,
true, Jenny.
yeah,
I love what you said. Is like shifting the words, because
for sure.
words guide our experience, and totally. And hearing that you did that is like the hypnobirthing. I don't know like a ton of it. I did like thumb through it when I was pregnant, so I can't speak to it, but I've heard that it's very similar. It's a mindful process. Totally.
And like you said, all of these things that we've learned through that, we're able to carry on into our everyday lives these days. And I've
Yes.
shared all of these things with my daughters and with
Mm.
other women, as a community. It's like, I love that we have such a great community where we can support each other, and we can help other women, with our experiences.
So true.
And you
There.
can you can do that with everything, in life.
Anything. Yeah.
Changing your internal language, and
Yes.
being present in the moment, being active in your life, so that you're not wasting your life with, those outside distractions. And it just takes coming back and centering back into yourself, whether it's breathing, whatever it is that you do. I think that's really helped me a lot in life in general.
Yeah, it's getting out of that autopilot of
Yeah,
the
for
okay,
sure.
getting up and just moving, running, like you're saying, and no, actually showing up for our lives, because it could be a year later. I think it's a lot of that conversation about day to day is like, oh my gosh, how is it February already? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
because we're on autopilot, and it's like, oh, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay. Oh, wait, it's already February 1st. So how much
Mm,
was I present for it? And so, yeah, bringing this into our day to day is so supportive.
Even with the simplest things, like we adopt these wonderful, beautiful self-care rituals and daily rituals that we do, right? But are we actually being present in the ritual? It could be as simple
Mhm.
as, like, when I stand up right now to go to the kitchen, like, am I in the moment? Am I focusing on just breathing and standing up and walking, rather than thinking about, like, what am I going to be doing and all of these outside things? It takes
So,
practice,
so
and
true.
everything is practice. It's all practice. And when you're in the moment, just do your best, and your best is going to vary, from time to time, day to day, moment to moment. But
yes.
when you're present, you're able to just do your best at doing this simple little thing.
What were some of your fears, or what was your greatest fear? If you had fears, which I'm guessing you did, what was your greatest fear when you realized you're going to be a mother? You're bringing this little human into this world.
Oh gosh, I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I was that my biggest fear was something would be wrong with my child, and
Uh,
wrong meaning like maybe the baby would have a disability, or I wouldn't be able to care for the baby, or what was going on in there. I felt so not in control of what was going on in my body, and because it is a very surrendered state, and I
mhm.
love control. So it was like, well, I have no control over what is going on in there. And I don't know, like, is everything going to be okay? Am I going to be able to carry this baby until, the end of like the whole process? Is this baby going to survive? Like, I didn't know. And my biggest fear was something would unfold that I wouldn't be able to handle.
That's beautiful. That's so great you shared that because then this book makes complete sense. It's about like
Mhm.
bringing, your mind back to the present moment. Because like in the moment when you're like 2 months or 3 months, nothing's happened, right? So I love that. Yeah. And it's like that's the beauty of mindfulness. And I love that you actually connected the two with, the mindfulness piece of it with pregnancy, because how do we bring the mind back? Because there's a lot of things that happen in those 9 months. And interestingly, when you are very young, in your like 20s, having a baby, your thought process is very different
Oh yeah.
from when you're like a little bit older and then you realize the world is not, you're not an immortal, that
Mhm.
life has a lot more challenges than you have experienced in your first 2 decades.
Yeah.
So, our thoughts
That's true.
change too regarding whatever we're experiencing. So, yeah, like my fear, especially the more aware I became of my fears, because when you are not aware of it, you just react,
Yeah,
right?
Hmm.
for
You just
sure.
react the way you are taught, either by your parents or you react the way your peers are reacting
Yeah.
in motherhood. So I would say it was like the fear of inadequacy, feeling
Mm.
like I'm not going to be a great mother for these two, that I'm going to be making so many mistakes that that it's going to be my fault if they don't become this or if they don't do this or, like all
Yeah.
that I took it upon myself and I would push myself to put them in the best schools. And this is when they were younger, and I can see where it was coming from. I just had no awareness of it. I
Yeah.
would, and it wasn't so much pushing them, I was pushing myself
Yeah.
into making things happen. And
Totally.
talk about control, right? And that illusion of control was huge. And it wasn't until I became aware of it, I realized, I am they just came through me and I'm here to guide them to become the best version of themselves.
Mhm.
I'm not here to solve their challenges, but just be here, be always unconditionally, be present for anything that they may need. And as soon as I recognized that, I started to see them clearly, like differently
Mhm.
from this my extension. I started to
Yeah.
see them as these beautiful humans that I started loving learning about them.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
You
it's
know,
like it's
I
such a
can
different,
relate
it's a
with that.
shift. Yeah, me too. I can
Yeah.
very much relate. Go ahead.
I'm an only child. So I would say my concerns or my fears were really around the unknown. My biggest fear was that I didn't want them to suffer the ways that I have had to suffer, in my life. So just learning what not to do from my upbringing and my parents, and making sure to make those shifts so they didn't have to experience the things that I went through. um yeah, I've learned so much because I have three biological daughters of my own, and then my husband has three sons and a daughter, so together we have seven. And I can remember at the beginning, like when the kids were really young, I had no idea. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Is this normal? And my husband would be like, oh yeah, that's totally normal. That's how siblings act or whatever. So I can relate to what you're saying too about just, seeing them as their own little souls with
Mhm.
blueprints and learning from them. It's so amazing how much we learn from each other. And then when we just surrender and learn that we're helping them to be the best versions of themselves. It just really it's magical. It's beautiful.
That separation, like
Yeah,
you were saying,
exactly.
seven, it's like,
Non-attachment. Yeah.
yes, versus that, like, oh, I am
Yeah.
them, they are me. Yes,
Yeah.
we're connected. There are, we love them, and there are, they came through us, but we're not like, it's not that
They're not
grasping.
ours. They're
Yes.
not ours. They're their
No.
own people. And we have to allow them to have their own journeys,
Yes.
because they're going to do it anyway. So
Oh,
it's
they
like,
are. They
and
are.
they
They're
have
gonna
to.
like
They
run
have
off.
to. We
They're meant
want them
to.
to. We want them
Yes.
to
Yes.
experience things.
Yes.
We can't shelter them too much or else that harms them as well.
You're reminding me of I'll share a story with you guys quickly. So I think my son was probably 3 or 4, and we went on a walk in the woods, and it was just me, my husband, and my son, and he was in front of me, and it was a beautiful day, but it was also still the woods, right? And we go into the woods, and all of a sudden I feel like a mosquito bite me, and I see that my son's like itching his neck, and I was like, oh gosh, he's getting bit, and I start like swatting away, like that there's like pretty a good amount of mosquitoes, and I'm like, you know creating such, I would say, frustration for myself because I'm like swatting away all the mosquitoes. And my husband's like, Pyle, this is the woods. There's going to be mosquitoes. And I was just like, no, but I don't want him to get bit. And I was so frustrated. They're like walking through the woods, intending to have this beautiful, peaceful walk. And I was just so tense and like, I didn't want him to get bit. I didn't want him to get bit. And as I was like walking and swatting, I had a moment and I was like, "Oh, he's going to get bit. Like we're in the woods." So it's not what I realized, it was like it wasn't my duty to swat the mosquitoes away. It was my duty to be there when he got bit, because
Mm,
the truth is he's going to get bit,
Yeah.
in life. And as much as I want to protect, I want to shelter, I want to keep him in this like safe little bubble, that bubble, that's not going to serve him. And it just really, like, after that walk I was like, oh, okay, I'll show up with my tea tree oil, and
Yeah.
I'll rub him on your mosquito bites, but I don't want, that was the other thing my husband was encouraging. He was like, let him experience, yes, he's 3 and he's little, but like, we're here to be in the forest. So
yeah.
it's like hearing both of you guys, and Simi specifically, when you're saying it's like being around other people and hearing them, project their expectations on like, oh, what college are they getting into? Or like, oh, are they gonna succeed? Are they gonna fail? And like you, I imagine wanting to them to have a certain experience because of these conversations. It's also that is also protection, right? It's like, oh, let me protect you so you have the perfect life.
Yes.
Yes. It's like, wait a minute. Like we're all saying, it's like, oh, they're
We
gonna
can't
have
even,
their own life.
yeah, I was going to say, we can't even protect ourselves
No.
from a
Exactly.
perfect
So,
life.
And
so
that
Here
and
we
that's
are thinking.
that's the thing that pretty much we're all saying is like
mm,
not only being there with our children through the experiences, that's all we need to do is just be there for them, but also taking it back to ourselves, just being
mm,
here for ourselves as we go through these experiences. That's like the most important thing.
I love that
that's
story, Pyle.
Yeah.
That's just motherhood, like explained, you
Yeah.
know, that was
I
so
love
beautiful,
it.
that story. So as you were saying that story, I'm like, okay, this is like version 2.0 of this book. That needs to come out with that story.
Yeah.
that's like after pregnancy, how do we handle motherhood and presence? Because that's a whole different
It
story.
is. It
Have you
is.
have you considered writing another book?
It's funny, when I was pregnant, the second time around, a lot of people ask, they're like, "So, do you think this baby's going to bring a second book?" And I was very, I actually was living my first book. I was very intentional with my second pregnancy, and I just wanted to really sit in that pregnancy. And it wasn't until postpartum that I was like, oh, I have another book in me. I
Love that.
haven't I haven't started writing. I mean, I wrote like here and there, but the postpartum journey is something that is for me at both times was very intense. Motherhood in general is, as I know, it's intense, but postpartum for me, like that period is just like it's such a, I keep using vulnerable, sensitive. I called it the tunnel of surrender
Yeah.
because there was so much of a transition happening. And that was the other thing. It was like, okay, well, how much support do is there out there
Yeah.
around this conversation of postpartum? And because that was the other one of the thoughts that I had is like, I think the words like postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, like we talk about those things, but I also feel like postpartum has so many emotions, grief, um
Absolutely.
frustration, anger, and it's like, well, is there a term for those, or is that just the postpartum experience and we're not having those yes, it's the whole experience. And so that's something that I, one day, I don't know when, but I'd like to explore and go deeper into and to be having more conversations about too.
When you write, does it just come to you from like the universe or no? It's just like in your mind. And because I know like I have written music in the past and
Yeah.
vocals, and it just like
Mhm.
it comes to me like out of nowhere. And
Okay.
I'm like, I have to record it and I have to write it down right now so I don't lose it. Is
Mm.
that your
Actually,
experience?
yes. So it is very similar to what you're saying. I thought when you first asked that question, I was like, it doesn't come out in thin air, but it is more so that it kind of does, like in a way of I'll be in mid conversation, usually with my husband, and I'm like, wait, where's my notepad? And I need to write. And he knows at this point to just let me write because I've been inspired by something and it needs to come out of me. But it's also because I've been stirring with it. Like, even this idea of a book maybe around postpartum. Like I seeded it when I was in my postpartum journey, but I haven't felt that thing that's like, okay, I'm actually going to start writing now. But it is similar to what you're saying of when a song comes to you. It's like when it comes, but I've kind of been stirring around it for some time. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm asking like for other women who might want to, write a book about their experiences to help other women share, like what's part of that process that you go through? Is it that, the writing the notes, and then, what are some of the processes you go through? What was
So
that like for you writing a book?
Wow, it was such a process. It was like, I'd always wanted to write a book since I was a little girl. I loved writing ever since I was a little girl. Writing is something that me and Simi connected on. That was actually how I found Simi. It's like I read her blog post and I was like, this is so beautiful. Her writing's so beautiful, and I reached out to her. So it's just I love writing, and so I've always been writing. And then I think, when I was pregnant, I was just writing daily. And it was a
Journaling.
certain, there was yeah, I was journaling that
Wow.
just, and it was more for myself until it became like, oh no, this is something that I want to share. And part of my process has evolved to using Notepad on my phone,
Yeah.
because there's something about it that feels like generally love pen and paper, but as a mother who's moving around with my kids, and like you're saying, like if there's another mother out there that wants to share her experience, it's like I have my phone with me all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just like there's something about in the notepad that I feel connected to it. I don't for on my computer I don't feel that connected, but something about typing on my notepad. So that was part of my process, but a lot of my process was getting my own limiting thoughts and stories out of the way to actually keep writing and finish and then publish
Yes.
too.
Finishing is the hard part, right?
Following through. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, Keck, I have a small section that I wanted to read from your book pile, if that's okay. Or you know what? Maybe, do you have the book next to you? Maybe it's better to come from you. No, you don't. Okay.
Sorry, it's okay.
So, okay. So, this is from page 28. It says, I chose to look to the external for validation that I was inherently enough as I was. I looked to the friend who had it all: confidence, looks, creativity. And I attached myself to them because if I was their friend, then I was worthy. Anytime that shiny person chose me as a friend, I showered them with gifts and love just so they wouldn't find how unworthy I was of their presence. I looked to the highly respected college degree because if I had that degree, then I was worthy. I looked to the man who had already been bestowed a golden star to date me because if I had his attention, then I must be worthy. Before I got pregnant, I looked to the work that I did because if I had the career everyone wanted, then I would be worthy. If only I had the things, the people, the job, then and only then would I be allowed to have a space in this world.
Wow.
I love that. Absolutely love that because I think everyone can relate to this feeling of not being enough, not feeling worthy until we have what the society thinks we should have. And that creeps into motherhood. Everything else only impacts us. But when we bring that into motherhood, it actually ends up impacting another generation,
Yeah.
Oh,
right?
true. Yes, yes. It's like we project onto our children this feeling of unworth. Like, well, it goes back to what you were saying, Simi, is like, okay, my child must go to a prestigious school in order for our family or me to feel worthy. So now I'm
Yeah,
projecting onto my child that you must go to the school so that we are a worthy family.
family. Yeah.
I will
And
say
then,
I have not projected like that kind of mindset onto my um daughters, but my middle daughter, because of the environment she's in, she is having all of these feelings, and these feelings about she's so hard on herself, like with school, and she's doing so much, and it's like she's not even an adult yet, but in her mind, like she has to go to the Ivy League, and she has to be the best and the smartest, and that's part of her journey, and I can honestly say that that's definitely not something that I have projected on her, but I watch it every day, and no matter what I say, she's like, "No, mom, you don't understand. Like this is what I'm doing," and she's very convicted. It's a big
Wow.
conviction to her.
and do
So
you
I
think
see
some
that
of
in
it is
her.
genetic? Yeah, and do you
Yeah.
think, thank you for sharing that, because sometimes we think we are projecting, and then sometimes, because I told
Mm.
the boys, I'm like, hey, whatever you want to, because I grew up in a very Asian, like Indian mindset where everyone went into the STEM field. There were no other options, right? Like either you go to school for pharmacy, engineering, law school, or a doctor. That was it. No other choices. But when I had the boys, I'm like, okay, let me be very open and say, hey, whatever it is that you want to try, I am open to. If we have the financial means for it, we'll send you to take classes and get exposed to it. Interestingly, both of them decided to go into, the STEM field. So it's
It's in them.
yeah. So it's,
Yes.
and there was this study that was done that and obviously, it's still, they're still looking into that. But I do want to share that because we as parents, we always think we have so much control over, like, oh, the first, 10 years, how we feed them is how they're going to eat for the rest of their lives,
Mm.
or how we teach them about relationships is exactly how they're going to live, relationships in their lives. And interestingly, with food, they were saying that, every child has his or her genetic makeup,
Yeah.
and we can feed them really great food for like the first 10 to 12 years, and they will follow because they don't have the option to go to a vending machine, or they don't have money to go buy, food
There you
at a
go.
fast food restaurant. So, but the study was saying that after 12 or 13, they fall back into their predisposed way of eating, influenced by their genetic makeup, which was interesting to me because both my boys have very different tastes in food. So I'm
Yeah.
like, well, it does kind of make sense because I fed them the same thing,
Yeah.
but and
Yeah.
and they do eat healthy. In all honesty, they do eat healthy. I that study was greatly humbling. I'm like, I can't take credit for it because it was just them. Maybe
Yeah.
that's just how they're wired. And the same way, if we have three kids and one eats differently, we shouldn't feel terrible about that either because
Of
every
course.
child is uniquely made.
Mm.
And they're going to find their way. I mean, I raised because I'm a nutritionist and I've got all the food allergies, and I was able to recognize that my daughters also had very similar food allergies by the way they were responding with food, like if they had rashes on their bottom, certain different emotional and mental aspects with them. I was able to pinpoint and recognize what foods were causing those. So I avoided them. I did teach them a great foundation of how to eat individually, each one of them. Our diet is very individual to us. We each have our happy foods that make us feel great, and we have our foods that make us feel horrible. And with my kids, I was able to help them to recognize what foods those are individually for themselves. Now, that, like you were saying, like that study they did, is so true, because as soon as middle school hit and they're around their friends and their friends are eating the fast food and the packaged foods and all these things, they started to explore more and started having all of these reactions. But it's like I had to learn to not be attached to that and to just reassure myself that they have a great foundation. They've been taught the skills and they've been given the tools of how to learn what agrees and doesn't agree with their body. And it's taken a few years now. My youngest is 14, my middle one is 16, my oldest is 25. I'm
I was loving what you were saying because, and I don't know if Simi has shared with you, but my oldest son has allergies, and watching me or my husband has one allergy, but we don't, and so it was a total surprise to us to watch his body react to what we considered like normal foods, and as we're like the point of they're so individual, including the foods or their emotional makeup. And what you were saying earlier, Debbie, is like you didn't project onto your middle daughter, yet here she is still feeling this need to have this external validation to make herself worthy. It doesn't matter what you say. And that also including like everything that we're ingesting, and whether it's like our the people that are surrounding us, because it's not just us as
Oh, it's
mothers.
everything.
There's
Yeah, it's
so many
literally everything.
people, yeah, surrounding our children, and they have their own makeup
They
of
do.
like what foods are happy foods for their bodies. I loved how you said that because
Yeah.
it's everyone is so individualistic, yet that's not what I think the general, you know, conversation is. It's like, oh, but these are the common foods. Like
Yeah.
dairy is a
Oh,
thing
this
that we
tastes
just,
so great. Like, let's go, pick this up or whatever. People have lost that connection of, nourishing your body.
hmm,
But
yes.
the point is really, as they finally came around,
Hmm.
there were a couple of years where they were suffering, and I could see they were suffering, and I knew they were suffering because they ate some crappy food and they were hiding it from me because they were judging themselves, but they thought that
Yeah.
they would be in trouble or that I would judge them, and they just it was coming from inside of them. And finally I was like, listen, I don't want to have this kind of relationship with you. I will never judge you. I'm just here to support you. Like, I don't want you to suffer, but just come to me. I'm not saying this to you because I want to control you. I'm just sharing my experiences with you, and we're a lot of alike. We've had a lot of the same reactions to the same foods, so that really made a shift with them. And so now when they do, they'll be like, oh man, I had dairy, and I'm like, ooh, I know what that feels like, just rest or take this or whatever and be careful. And they're like, yeah, I need to eat less gluten or less dairy. So that after that period of them like being ashamed, finally they were like, oh, well, my mom's there to support me. I'm not going to get in trouble. She's not going to judge me. Like I can talk to her about it now because she's experienced these things that I've experienced.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They knew they
I
could rely on you to
Yeah,
just,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And the best part of it, like listening to you both and then from my own experience, it's great that we don't have to take credit for how they turn out, but we also don't have
Yeah.
to beat ourselves up, for how they turn out. Nurture is important, at least from my experience to an extent. But all of our experience, like it takes me to like there's this I may butcher it, but it's in the Gita, it says, do your labor, but release the fruit of your labor. So we do what is what needs to be done as our dharma, but we're not focused so much on the outcome.
Yes.
Because
can
and when it
can I
comes to
clarify a little bit?
yeah, 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 please do.
It's
You're
so
probably yeah.
so in the Gita it says that we have a right to our work. So we have a right to our work, but we don't have a right to the fruit of our labors. So we have a right to
Mm,
our labor, but not the right to the fruit of our labor.
And
I
that's
love that.
non-attachment, right?
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly it.
It's non-attachment, and also like that it's our right to show up and do the work. Like
Yeah.
that's what we're
That's
responsible
it.
for.
Not the
So
outcome.
it's never, it's not like, I think it's the expectation of it's like, well, if I did the right things, then the right things would unfold, or like the fruit would, I mean, if you think about the Gita, it's like, it's pointing to nature as well. It's like you can plant the seeds and you tend to the garden, but whether that, garden flourishes or not is not, it's not our right. And
That's right.
it's up to God, it's up to nature. There's so much happening outside of our work, but it's pointing to like, well, what's our responsibility? And thank you for
Our
letting me,
responsibility is to be present.
yes,
That's
and to
it.
do our work.
Yep.
Totally.
There was one more thing, Pile, that you wrote. It said it was like a question you had in the book.
Mm.
By the way, this is the book. It says, did we get pregnant too quickly? I should be focused on my career.
Mm.
So that's probably a struggle for or a challenge for a lot of women who want to get pregnant. Do I wait until everything is
Mm.
perfect with my career before I make that decision, or do I have it and then do it simultaneously? Like all these thoughts run through our minds. And even we were just discussing you possibly thinking about writing a book. I see that as work.
That's actually very alive for me right now, um, because I think, becoming a mother, that there's actually a woman that I've been paying attention to lately, and her name is Neha. I don't know her last name, but she just wrote a book called The Power Pause, and I haven't read it yet, but the essence of what she's sharing is like this possibility of pausing our career when we start to have children, and honoring that if we choose it. It's not a gap. It's like we're choosing to be a mother 100%, because and when we get back to our purpose, when we get back to our work that we're talking about in the Gita, it's like it's the perfect timing. And but it's when we choose. I For me it's like it's been such a dance. When I had my first son, we had a lot of health challenges with him in the beginning, and so that was my number one priority. And I wasn't thinking about, okay, am I writing a book, or am I going to finish the book, because I started writing it when I was pregnant. And once I gave birth, it was, everything was focused on him. And then I think slowly I came to a point where I was like, I felt that spark of like, oh, I want to get back to the book. I want to publish this book before my goal was like before I turned 40. That was my marker. Yes, I was still a mother and I was still very devoted to my son, and I had this feeling in my heart that I wanted to see this book out in the world. And now I actually, my second son is 20 months old, right? And when he was born, I had a very tough postpartum. And I, I mean, even with my first, I thought that I was going to go back to my career at the typical like 3 months, 6 months. I was like, I'm going to go back to my career. I'm going to, put him in daycare. And nothing like that happened with my first. And then with my second as well, I hired a nanny. And when she would come, I was like, I just want to be with him. Like, I was like, could you, help me with some other things? And she was so kind and supported me in that process, that actually that I really wanted to just be there for all of it. And it's just now with my son turning 20 months that I'm like, I feel that pull again, like doing this podcast. As it's funny, Debbie, you asked that question. It's like, what did it take for you to get here? And I think it was also me being ready to start like using my voice again and like sharing again, because even my husband's been like nudging me. He's like, okay, Pyle, like, when are you going to start sharing about mindfulness? When are you going to start, talking about the postpartum journey? And I was like, I just don't feel it right now. And I want to honor myself in the journey of motherhood, because I'm not going to get this time back with my sons.
Yeah.
And nothing against anyone else that chooses to go back way earlier. I've met women, I also run a co-working space, and I met a woman who ran a startup, and she told me that the day after she gave birth, she opened up her laptop and she was doing work, and that is what made her feel alive.
Yeah.
And more power to her.
Mm-hmm.
I just think
Absolutely.
all of us have such different journey. I'd love to hear for both of you guys, what did you all feel when after you gave birth? Did you feel that call to like go right back to your purpose, or what was it like for you two?
I was 23 when I had my first daughter, and I was a stay-at-home mom. My husband was a chiropractor, and I did work as his assistant, and I helped him run the business. But I was able to stay home with my daughter. I ran a co-op preschool with other parents, where the parents ran the school, so I was very, very involved in her life, and I was able to take that time to be able to do that. I really didn't know what my career was going to be. I never knew I would own a restaurant. I never knew that I would take my experiences and study Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, and holistic nutrition and start helping other people. I just wasn't quite there yet. I was still finding myself and growing up with my daughter per se. But I did realize, because my husband, he was not very involved, I was literally doing everything. I was like, my current husband calls me, like, he says, oh, you were a Stepford wife, because it's like I stayed home all day. I had an allowance every week. I had to be home by 4 o'clock to get home, to make dinner, to host dinner parties, and take care of the baby all day long. So there was a point where I did hire a nanny to come for like 2 hours a day so I could have time to myself, and focus on myself and work out or just do whatever I wanted to do to be with myself. 9 years later, my second daughter came along, and of course I was in my 30s then, so completely different stage in my life. I knew myself more. I had started already helping people. I was like immersed in the whole holistic health, um uh holistic health, and helping other people heal themselves through nutrition. um and then I got pregnant 13 months later with my third daughter, my youngest one. So I was very, very focused on them. But then I started feeling that, like you said, it's like that calling of sharing my purpose with other people. And when my youngest one was around 2, I decided to get some different certifications and started taking that time for myself to go and study on a Saturday all day long, like um acupuncture and herbalism, because I knew that that's the direction I was starting to learn. Like, what is my purpose? In which direction do I want to have a career? Is this what I want to do for a living while balancing, having kids? So that's how it happened with me. But I do know that in my mind, still to this day, like when they were little, I was like, I have daughters. It is my purpose in life to, like bring amazing women into this world. Like I just felt like I was given daughters for a reason. So it's always been very important to me to be very present with them while I'm with them. And for a lot of the time, I was a single mom. So when I didn't have the girls, I was able to focus on myself and my career, and I would work 3 jobs while building my own business and my brands. And then when I was with them, I would shut it all off and I would be present with them. And then in my life, even though like now that I have a grown daughter and my 2 youngest ones are teenagers, in my mind, I still think like, I know I wasn't ready to open the restaurant until it was like divine timing from the universe. And the universe was like, okay, your kids are old enough now. You've done your job. It's like we go through the maiden, the mother, and the wise woman, And it was like that
Yes.
opportunity just organically just happened, like with the support
Mhm.
of the universe and timing and me being ready and open
Mhm.
to receiving, open to expanding, and surrendering. So I still
Mhm.
think in my mind, like I gave myself like a time period for the restaurant. Like, let's see what happens in 5 years, and I've got this amount of time that the kids are still going to be at home, and then I have plans for the next stage in life. So that's really how, in my mind,
That's beautiful.
things work. Yeah, yeah, and how it's all evolved.
My journey was somewhat similar to what both of you were saying. I had my boys, my first at 26, my second at 28, and we were financially pretty stable where I could stay home for at least the first 2 years of their lives. For both of them, I was able to do that, which I am extremely grateful that I had that opportunity, because some of the best moments are those naps that you take on the couch with your baby on your chest. I mean, that feeling, like you just can't get that, right? If you're at work at noon. So I appreciate that. And then I went through a divorce, and then I had to be almost like a single mom. I got into meditation and all of that stuff after the divorce because I wanted to understand why I was going through this. And then, went on the seeker's journey. And that's when I started to look at my life objectively. Like, what have I been doing as a wife, as a daughter, as a mom? And interestingly, after I got a divorce, I started working full time. And that's 5 days, Monday through Friday. But because I was learning about mindfulness and becoming more conscious of how I was with the boys, I felt like I was more present with them, even though I had a full time job. And I was able to share. And that's what changed
Mhm.
my perspective of, there's no right or wrong. If feeding the children food is definitely really important, right? When
Yeah.
you're a mom. So the choices we have to make. And
Even if you are drinking shakes and they're eating the food.
really,
Just
Yes.
saying.
Or you're eating the
exactly.
bits of what
Yeah.
the end of
So
their foods. Yes.
Yeah.
yeah. So there's no right or wrong, but presence, I think, bringing mindfulness to that journey of motherhood is what changed my perspective of what a mother should, or for me at least, for how I wanted to show up for in my kids' lives. So whether I stayed home or not, it wasn't as important. But of course, it would be great, when they, for me, If the baby is so tiny, so little that it can't even talk, I want to be home with them. That's a personal choice I'm making if I can financially take care of them, right? But even if I had to work, I feel like I could have still brought that beautiful element of uh, peacefulness and mindfulness to that experience. And it's not something you just do with motherhood. Like when you go to work, you do the same thing. You bring that presence, you bring that mindfulness, you bring that sense of gratitude for that work that is able to feed your family. Like all of that perspective has shifted the way I show up for anything now in life. Now it's, sometimes I forget, but the more I've practiced, the better that muscle is getting, I would say. I'm able to notice it and say, oh, you're falling back into that victim mindset. I was like, oh, I got to do this.
Yep.
And then it's like, wow, I get to do this. What an honor, what a privilege, what a sacred opportunity to be alive and to do this, whatever it is that I'm doing. So that was my experience.
It's that bringing back the mindfulness practice, like you said to me too. It's like, okay, the dance of the surrender and the practice. It like
Yeah.
keeps going together.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
cycles and the seasons, and just being
Yes.
present and receiving all of the lessons that all of that brings is very important. But yeah, cherish those
Honoring that.
moments because we can
I'm
both tell you that it goes by very quickly and it's always amazing. Every different stage is
It
just
is.
fascinating and amazing. It
Yes,
really is, but they're all different.
Mhm.
And that's
they
the one thing
are.
we can count on, right? Is change.
That's also
Agree.
encouraging. It's like knowing that each phase is going to be amazing. It's like reminding, I don't know, because that's another part I feel like I think again with social media it's shifting, but the general of like, oh, it's gonna be so hard. Oh, wait till they're teenagers. It's like
Oh yeah.
that consciousness of like how we're speaking to mothers of like,
Mhm.
it's like, oh well, well, wait till they can't sleep or wait till this, and it's like, why do we do that to each other?
Yeah,
Like, why aren't we lifting each other up and saying
Yeah.
like, yeah,
yeah,
it's going to get more and more amazing, like you just said, Debbie. It was so beautiful, and it's like it gives me something to, yes, honor where I'm at and also look forward to, rather than
yes,
be dreading like I'm going to have teenagers at some point and it's going to be horrendous. And I mean, that was actually reminding me of the times when people be like, oh well, wait till you hit the terrible twos. And neither of my children, I mean, my second isn't two yet, but my first had no terrible two like energy at all. So, and like, why do we project that onto each other, that it's all going to be the exact same experience for everyone?
I'm not unrealistic. Like, there are always going to be challenges. There's going to be a lot of uncomfortable moments, but there are lessons in everything.
Mhm.
And it just makes us stronger. The fact that we're able to work through these things and get through these things changes
Mhm.
us as a person, as a woman, as a mother. We become just so much stronger than we were even yesterday from the experiences that we have today and the challenges.
So true.
I know. I
Yeah.
feel the same way when it comes to, I often get asked, do you miss when they were, 2 or 3? And in all honesty, as much I loved when they were 1 and 2 and 3, but the experience I'm having with them right now is just as incredible. It's
Yeah.
just different. And I'm excited to watch them grow, evolve, become young men and have their own thoughts. And we can go to a cafe and talk for like 3 hours, like all four of us. And then we're done and we're like, we don't want to go, but everyone has things to do. So we leave. But it it's a beautiful experience. So I don't have that same, maybe I did like years ago. Um, Now I see it differently. I don't feel like, oh, I wish they stayed young. I wish they needed me. I don't feel that way at all. I love every age, every moment came with its own challenges, but I love it all. It's a great experience.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
awesome.
It goes back to, hey, if you're doing your best to be present in that moment, then most likely you're not going to feel like you've missed out on anything or have any regrets. Because you can say,
Yeah.
hey, I did the best with the tools that I had at that moment, and it is what it is, you know?
So
So
true.
what do you both think? Let's we're getting to the end of the episode. How do you define success in motherhood? How
Oof.
would you define it?
Mm.
Yeah. Or
I,
is there such a thing?
no, it's like it's probably individual. I
It's
personally,
very individual. Yeah.
yes, yes.
I would say. I mean, I just, like I said before, is like being in the present moment, being gentle on yourself and realizing that you're doing the best with the tools that you have. And taking each mistake, each challenge as a lesson to grow and perhaps make a shift next time, you have an experience or learn how to communicate with your kids and to balance your life.
Mm,
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. I would define success for me in motherhood is honoring the journey. And
Yeah.
it's very,
mm,
very similar. It's like honoring the journey, reminding myself that this is a journey. This is
Yeah.
not we're not, it's not a destination. I'm here to
mm.
love them, you
Yeah.
know, be with them, experience the pain with them, remind them that there is pain. I think that's something to me that I would consider a success is to remind them that this is like a holistic world and not just, there is going to be those ups and downs, and it's not going to be here, it's not going to always be up here, it's going to be, this 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 flow.
Right?
Yeah.
And
It
yeah,
It really
fluctuates.
is. Yeah.
what
Yeah, there
about
is
you,
no
Cindy?
success. Yeah, I was gonna say for me, I don't look at life with that type of duality anymore as much as I used to. Like, if I something happens this way or that way, it's a success, or if not, it's a failure.
Yeah.
I just look at it as I'm here to experience life, and I'm here to experience the life of motherhood, and however it plays out, it plays out.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
of course, the mother in me just wants to see them happy. That'll always be there for the rest of my life. So I embrace that part of me too. But yeah, I don't look at anything I do as much as I used to, as with that lens anymore. And I'm grateful I don't, because it doesn't make sense to me from in my life at least. So
I'm
thank you so much. Yeah, if there's something more to share, please do.
Yeah, I think that, we are all happy when our kids turn out to be kind human beings, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There was something that someone shared is like, when we know that, like, it to show our parents that they've been successful is to not be a burden on them. And
Mm,
it's like being kind, I imagine, is not being a burden on, like, as
mm,
when they grow up to be adults, at least.
Yeah.
It's like, not, of course, when they're young, there's things to be taken care of, but once our child has gone to an adult stage, is to not be a burden on our parents.
mm.
Would be like a definition. I like that because it aligns with being kind and being kind to our parents too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we always end episodes with a quote that means something to us. It can be about this topic or not. I'm sorry, Pyle, I should have told you about that before you came.
Like
So if
that,
you
I
want to
gotta
take a
think about
moment to think about it, feel free
Yes,
to
I
do that.
do. I think I do. I'm like, oh, what's my current quote that I'm sitting with? I'm like, I was about to say, where's my phone? My phone's sitting in front of me.
You know
I
when
actually will
It
come.
could be
I have
something super
this
simple. It
will,
doesn't have to be a quote. It could be
okay.
anything that comes to your mind that you want to say. A
phrase,
couple of
yeah.
words, a
Well,
sentence.
there was something that came up as we were connecting that is one of my favorite quotes. Simi said, as you said that, it's by Eckhart Tolle, and
Mm,
it's life. I'm not going to get it perfect, but it's like life will give you whatever, like, is needed to to raise your consciousness, basically. That's like
Yeah.
whatever is unfolding in your life is to grow your consciousness, to raise your consciousness. I'm butchering it, but it's
No,
so
that's so
No, that
true.
was
So
perfectly
true.
stated. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
that's my favorite. And I think it comes from A New Earth, by him,
Oh,
by
yeah. Great
Eckhart.
book.
Yeah. I love him. I follow him. Yeah.
So quotes come to me when I'm showering. I have no idea why.
Great.
I should be
It's the
present with
water
the shower, but
flowing.
when the water comes,
They're
quotes
there,
show
they're
up.
flowing.
So, based on the book that you've written, the quote that came to my mind today was, "Don't aim for perfection in motherhood. Aim for presence."
Mm,
Hmm. Yeah.
beautiful. So true.
Mine is be in the moment.
Mm,
Mm,
so aligned with our
beautiful.
conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else either of you want to share? You feel like we missed anything? Any topics?
No.
Yeah.
Thank you both
Thank
for
you.
making the time to be here today. To all of us, and I thank myself as well.
Mm, thank you
Yeah.
Yeah.
both as well.
Thank you so much for being a part of our journey. Hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode. Be sure to leave your comments on this episode below.
Yeah, if you have anything you'd like for us to talk about in future episodes, let us know. And we'd love to hear your experiences as well. If you'd like to stay connected with us, our social media handles are at The Savory Scoop. And if you'd like to send us an email, our email is connect@thesavoryscoop.com. Thanks for listening.